Hello, it's me, Kamina Joe, and in today's video I wanted to talk about my journey with, mental health and actually getting the help that I needed, and also kind of how the different intersections of my life affected the way in which I seek help. So yes, tune in. Disclaimer, I will not be going fully in depth into my past traumas. I'm saving that for another video. I will make kind of like a general sketch of what I went through and what I was kind of diagnosed with during my therapy sessions and the diagnosis from the psychologist. The psychologist. I'm gonna search what the person is. Wait una segunde.
A few moments later.
Yes, so my psychologist. Search it, my psychologist. Okay, so let's begin from the beginning. I think by 2014, I was feeling quite depressed. I was feeling a void. And also in that year, I drank a lot. I mentioned this in one of my episodes because I have a podcast. Shameless plug. I will link my podcast in the description bar. Tune in if you love a good podcast. I discuss a lot about introspection and self-reflection and how things or topics just affect Black women. So, give it a listen. But yes, in 2014, I would go out a lot and I would numb myself. I mean, some people can say also self-medicate with a lot of alcohol. Trigger warning, alcoholism. But yes, I kind of developed a dependency to just get by and to be a fun person. Some of the people that I had in my life during that period can attest to the fact that I was just doing the most when it comes to drinking. I felt quite empty. I wasn't myself. And after a day of drinking, I would get these depressive episodes that would last well into 3 days after drinking. What a lot of people can say, oh, but it's just a hangover. But no, it was really just me fighting my own thoughts. It was very much intense. I then talked to my mom about this and she's like, well, let's pray about it, because I come from a Christian household. My mom is Christian, my dad isn't, but grew up being in the church every Sunday. So as my mom said, let's pray about it. And I'm just like, child, the prayers ain't working. I need something else. And she's like, no, but let's pray. Let's talk to God about it. By that period, I didn't have that quite a strong relationship with God, but I was like, okay, let's try it. And this is in 2014, still that same year, and nothing was helping, and I still felt that void. By I think somewhere July, I go to the general practitioner in Suriname and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but I feel sad. And the thing is, that general practitioner knew my parents, so I didn't want her talking to my parents about my situation. So I went to her office and I kind of lied and I just said like, hey, I am feeling quite sad. Can you help me? And she's like, oh, well, what are you sad about? And I was like, my parents' divorce. I just said something. And she was like, oh yeah, I can imagine. So she then refers me to the psychologist. And that's still in Suriname. And the system in Suriname was that you had a certain amount of sessions, I think around 10 sessions, and you would pay half of it and then they would cover the other half depending on your insurance company. So I think I went for 10 sessions, and also my psychologist then said there's also a group therapy session for young women that are in your age category and you're all dealing with with similar topics. So in 2014, 2015, I did group therapy and then one-on-one therapy. So in that period, I just unpacked the first layer or peeled back the first layer of the onion. I truly feel that, as humans, and if you've experienced a certain amount of trauma, there are layers to it, and you really have to you can't tackle it all at once because you also get overwhelmed. So you peel back the first layer, and that's what I can say that I did in the first year that I went to therapy. And the group therapy also helped me because then I realized, oh, I'm not alone in certain situations, and it's also very nice to have these kind of, like, I wouldn't say comparison points, but at least to be in a group of people that understand you and that are going through similar things. I want to say that also in that period, a lot of the things that made it difficult for me to access mental help, or at least to find a therapist, was the fact that, as I said, I grew up in a Christian household, and if you go to the church religiously, a lot of people will say like, oh well, just pray the pain away, pray the pain away, pray the hurt away, pray that away, and ask God to help you, but you don't get concrete tools. So I felt as if I was overreacting by going to an actual psychologist, and I would say I wasn't motivated to go to the psychologist because they were like, God got you. And I was like, okay, but if God got me, then why am I still feeling like this? Because I'm praying every day, you know? And also, I think something that also added to having a barrier is I wanted a psychologist that understood my background. I had a hard time opening up to people as it is, and I didn't want to have to over-explain myself to someone that would just see me as a number. So I really wanted it to be a woman, and I wanted it to be a black woman, and I wanted her to understand family dynamics from my culture, so from Suriname. And that was quite an interesting list, or at least a list of demands that you can't always meet them. So those were the things that really held me back from searching someone, because I wanted, as I said, someone that could understand my background as a black woman. By the time I then found the psychologist, she met a lot of the requirements that I had in order for me to feel safe and comfortable with her. And the beautiful thing with the group therapy, there were a lot of girls that may not necessarily have looked like me, but our background and our stories were kind of similar, so that made it quite easy to open up, because during that time I was a vault of information. I just kept everything bottled up and tight and for myself, and I wouldn't share my true self with people. After a year, I finished my group therapy and my regular, like my one-on-one sessions with my psychologist. And as I said, that was the first layer of the onion. And I do believe that, you know, therapy and going to a psychologist, it isn't something that you can, for me personally, I can't do it every year, like on a continuous basis. I also need years to just let it process, let everything that I've talked about process, and after a while you also need to just implement the things and the tools that you have learned during therapy. So I finished around 2015, I went about my business. 2016 came, 2017, 2018, and 2019, and then in 2017 I moved to the Netherlands, and I was like, okay, cool. I think I have processed everything and I'm fine, and the world is beautiful and the world is my oyster, and I'm living my best life and it's all beautiful and dandy, until the panini hits us and I'm like, child, what's going on? Because again, the second layer of the onion is waiting to be peeled. And I was like, I don't feel that good. Like mentally, I don't feel that I'm in a good headspace. And I search for answers like, okay, will I go to therapy? And I'm in the Netherlands, and I'm like, child, will I don't want to be treated by somebody that doesn't look like me or doesn't understand my background, because if I sit there and the person is gonna be like, yeah, but your type, but the people with your background, and I'm like, no, I will not be an experiment for somebody. So I reached out to my old psychologist that I had in Suriname, and I sent her an email like, hey, could you help me find a black person? Could you please find somebody that looks like me, or refer me to somebody that looks like me in the Netherlands? And she's like, say less. I am back in the Netherlands. And I was like, bet, I'm coming back to you. And she worked in another city. And I was like, I don't mind taking the train. Even if I have to take the train every day, it's worth every penny, because I don't want to explain myself again. And you understand my background, you understand the intersections, the social categories that affect me. And I was like, I don't care where you are, I will find you. And I will sit there in peace, of course, and tell my story. So then I go to my general practitioner, who was also a Surinamese lady, and she was like, say less, here's your referral, go and get yourself back. Go and return to yourself. And I was like, I love you. I still miss her to this day because she's no longer my general practitioner, but I digress. Let's go back to the point. Then when I went for a second time to my psychologist, it was quite interesting to see the growth, but also the things that I wasn't ready to discuss in the first year, like in 2014, 2015. It was really nice to see how much I had implemented by myself from those sessions, but also how much I still had to unpack. And by that period, I could tell her more of what I was going through. I now realize that I haven't fully said, of course, what I was diagnosed with. Trigger warning, these are the things that I was diagnosed with the first time around, because I forgot to say that. So, depression, suicide, ideation, OCD, and anxiety. I think OCD and anxiety are kind of linked sometimes, but those are the 4 things. And then the second time around, I got diagnosed with CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I'm gonna like put a tab with like the definition and stuff. But what is CPTSD? Is a condition where you experience some symptoms of PTSD along with some additional symptoms like difficulty controlling your emotions. I was feeling very angry and distrustful, constant feelings of emptiness or hopelessness, feeling as if you are completely different to other people, like nobody can understand you. And yeah, so that was my diagnosis the second time around. And then I did different treatments. So I did EMDR, and then I did creative therapy, and the combination, and then one-on-one sessions with my psychologist. And the combination of those 3 things set me up for a greater success, because I was able to deal with so much more than I had anticipated myself. But anyways, I think in other videos I will go through each and every one of my experiences. So for instance, my experience with EMDR, my experience with creative therapy, my experience with group therapy, so that every form of therapy has its own video. Why am I doing this? Is because when I was going through this process, I often wanted to find people like me, or that looked like me, or they were also going through it, to at least know what to expect. But I didn't find a lot of stories of people that look like me online, and I was like, okay, you know what, someone might need this information, so I am creating the information and putting the information out there. Because if you look like me and you're like, do people like me do EMDR, or like what are the benefits for creative therapy? So I do want to break that taboo and just share my experience, so that you don't feel intimidated when it's time for you to go, because I survived it as well and I'm better for it. The videos will be under the category of mental health. But that was it in a nutshell. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like, comment, and subscribe. And also, if you've had experiences, going to a therapist or going to a psychologist, please don't be shy. Please comment down below what was your experience, if you feel free, of course. You can also find me online at Kamina Joe on Instagram if you want to DM me about your experience. And also, don't forget to listen to my podcast. It's available on Apple Podcasts. It's on Google Podcasts and it's on Spotify. So yeah, listen to my podcast and please do connect with me. But thank you very much for tuning in, and I wish you a blessed day. Bye.